Fang Ningran, a professor at the 22nd Century Medical School, died suddenly in the laboratory after enduring 3 days and 3 nights. When she woke up, she was wearing a book. The original owner was originally a rural woman who was imprisoned for 3 years for offending the powerful and suffered a tragic death. Now that she has arrived and unexpectedly obtained the lazy system, she has decided to seek revenge from her original owner. However, on the path of revenge, the truth comes to light, but she unknowingly finds her husband and even becomes a mother. Ranran, our childhood sweethearts. That morning. I have lost my memory. It's your delicious food that catches my taste buds first. Isn't it beautiful for one's own child to teach on their own? I pinched my fingers and calculated that my family is short of someone to open a pharmacy. His mother said, "My son only marries benefactors." Mommy Mia, what else can we do if we get married? Pet it. Chapter 1. As soon as he got out of prison, he had his meat cooked. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The Golden Bachelor has been single for 30 years and has been exhausted to death once. She has become a lazy woman in the system of wearing books and becoming a king. It seems that she can't even bear to watch the elderly. It must have saved too many people and accumulated great virtue. Yes, it must be like this, just why is it a short-lived cannon fodder? In the 365th year of the Yenyun dynasty, the new emperor ascended the throne. Celebrate the whole country and grant amnesty to the whole world. Fang Ningran stood quietly at the entrance of the prison, with countless thoughts. She has been traveling through this female dynasty for over a month now. She was originally a prisoner, but she had a close relationship with the prison guards and lived a delicious life in prison. Fang Ningran, taking advantage of the amnesty, I beg you to leave quickly. If you don't leave again, our underpants will lose to you. How about you think about the colorful world outside? Are you almost 18 years old? Has your husband married yet? Has your child been born yet? Are you going to pay a fine? Seeing her lingering, the prison guard worked hard to persuade her. Yes. Come to the NVU Zune once, revenge has not been avenged, and the husband has not married. Otherwise, how can I live up to the old man who sent me here? If the elderly have already set a red line, would it be heartless if I don't accept it? Fang Ningran murmured to herself, speaking softly as her thoughts drifted away. I was originally a professor at the 22nd Century Medical School, named Fang Ning. After enduring 3 days and 3 nights, I suddenly died in the laboratory and woke up to find that I had accidentally worn a book. It was still my beloved female emperor dynasty. Although women are respected here and there is no need to have children, Fang Ningran is a peasant girl and a short-lived cannon fodder behind the powerful. The original owner saved a prince from another country in a temple, but was falsely accused by the county magistrate and the princess of molesting him. He was imprisoned for 3 years and tortured to death. Because she was seriously injured, she had to use her medical skills to get along with the prison guards, winning a lot of silver and obtaining a lot of medicinal herbs. Thinking that the prison guards had helped her hide things from the sky and the sea, it was not easy for her. She took out a handful in her arms, opened her purse, and handed 100 taels to the prison guards. Sisters, it's not easy for everyone. I'll leave this money for you to buy drinks. Under the surprised gaze of the prison guard, she walked out and waved her hand behind their backs. Fang Ningran, you died in prison and rest in peace. I will live well, seek revenge for you, and take care of your family. She walked on the street, but the constant sounds of selling did not attract her attention. When she came to a Yihong building, she stopped in her tracks. In my previous life, I was single for 30 years and never even touched a man's hand. However, in this life, I have to come to places like Yaozi to negotiate deals. According to the book, the flower leader Du Yuan here is not as simple as he appears. He is the legitimate son of the Minister of War who has been lost for many years. To seek revenge, one's identity as a peasant girl is far from enough to reach that dog man and woman, let alone revenge. In addition to seeking revenge, she also wants to go to the imperial capital. After all, the beggar under the empress's feet is more likely to beg for food. So, this is an opportunity to establish a foothold in the imperial capital, and it can also be said to be a support. Go, go, go. Stinky beggar, do you deserve to be in such a place? Fang Ningran, who had just entered, was mercilessly kicked out by someone. She didn't give up, straightened her waist again, raised 100 taels of silver bills high, and walked in. Otherwise, the madam has a really sharp nose. When she smelled the smell of money, she immediately changed her face and approached with a smile on her face, saying, "Hey, is this little lady listening to music or looking for Rui Lang? Dad, my place is enchanting, charming, peaceful, graceful, and exquisite. There are all kinds of charm and everything you want, just listen to your words." Fang Ningran slammed the silver ticket fiercely on the table and said, "I want the flower leader, Du Shilang." The madam's smile slightly narrowed, and a hint of doubt flashed in her eyes. She looked up and down at her, as if exploring her background and purpose. "Oh, that's not possible. Shilang has an appointment with a nobleman today, I'm afraid tomorrow will be fine." The madam's tone was slightly evasive. Fang Ningran is a bit strange. How does this madam look at her like a thief? Oh, by the way, there is a small episode in the book where Du Shilang wants to elope with a woman. For various reasons, the woman disagrees, and Du Shilang is beaten to death as a result. It seems that what is too bright can only come in darkness. Then I'll listen to some music today. You can arrange a waiter and give me another room. Fang Ningran withdrew 100 taels of silver notes and finally gave 20 taels to put on the table. "If you're satisfied, give it to the big head." The madam then put on a smiling face, collected the money, and took her up to the second floor. Under the madam's smile, the two closed the door. The man leisurely played the piano, it sounded like a trickle of water, gentle and pleasant to the ear. Unfortunately, there was something serious going on now. After he played for a while, she quietly came behind him, with the silver needle in her hand flickering with a cold light. With a single thrust, the man collapsed weakly. She was more compassionate towards the man and gently laid him down before sneaking out. Fang Ning died the third floor and scanned the signs that marked various romantic places. In the end, she stopped at the door of the Flower Queen room. She quietly pushed the door in, lifted the curtain, and saw a faint figure on the bed. She stepped forward to check, and saw the man on the bed with snowy skin, no trace of dust, smooth and delicate, lips like cherry blossoms, charming and dripping, sweat dripping profusely, wetting strands of hair, adding a touch of seductive breath. The entire image is like a serene painting, making it difficult to disturb easily. She couldn't help but reach out and touch it, her heart thumping. Is this the feeling of a heart pounding? I don't know, did my first impression give to a brothel waiter? Suddenly, Fang Ningran felt something was wrong. He seemed to have been drugged. She looked at the cigarette curling up on the table, and her eyes became somewhat complicated. She was caught and didn't notice it. Oh, I blame myself for acting too recklessly. This person is unconscious, how can we talk about this matter? How about stealing him out first? Do whatever you say. Fang Ningran lifted the blanket and carried the man on the bed. There were people coming and going in the hallway on the second floor, so she had to go around to the fourth floor and find an empty room to temporarily take shelter. She had just put him down, only to find herself physically exhausted. She couldn't help but sigh that this potion was not cut corners at all, and her body began to have a strong reaction. What should we do? There are no medicinal herbs available now, and it's too late to prepare any antidote. When I first started reading, my mind prompted me that there was a lazy system, but it was really lazy. It actually said that she had to be lazy 100 times to activate it. She was lazy in prison for a month, and now it only shows that she has been lazy 80 times. It seems that I'm not too bad, I need to work harder. That fragrance is a joyful one, and within an hour, one must do something joyful. If not, the root will penetrate deep into the veins, and the 7 orifices will bleed and die. I wouldn't have been buried like this for my first time, would I? She stepped forward and patted his face. Wake up, me. I don't want to take advantage of someone's situation. Although you look very attractive, the most important thing is the look I like. It's very similar to my previous idol. The man opened his eyes slightly, his vision blurred. At this moment, he was already hungry and thirsty. He kept murmuring, give me what I want. As soon as he finished speaking, he couldn't wait and rushed forward like a hungry wolf, knocking Fang Ningran down to the ground. Feeling the coldness on the ground, Fang Ningran murmured inexplicably, as if her soul was betraying her surface purity. The man's cheeks were flushed and he felt hot all over. The corner of his mouth was slightly raised, revealing a successful smile. He gently held Fang Ningran's earlobe with his mouth and licked it. Fang Ningran suddenly opened her eyes. This person is like this, and she dares to deliberately tease her. Is this playing with fire? She stood up with a carp and turned over to press him down. She patted his face and said, brother, I'm detoxifying you. Remember that my name is Fang Ningran, and when you become wealthy in the future, remember to cover me up. The man's body became increasingly dry and flustered, sweating profusely. His clothes were already soaked in sweat and sticking to his body was extremely uncomfortable. He no longer wanted to listen to her nonsense and pulled open his clothes. Fang Ningran is drooling, it's okay, let's start making. Indulge recklessly *_*, however, she was the one lying flat. The reason is that she wants to be lazy again. About 3/4 of an hour later, Fang Ningran's waist and knees were sore and weak, and he simply collapsed. His grandmother has only one leg. If it weren't for this body being tormented in prison, the environment being humid, and not being agile enough, could it make you arrogant? Still unfinished, research system, / the sound of hurried footsteps outside startled Fang Ningran. Could it be that she felt guilty as a thief? The good thing was ruined by someone, and Fang Ningran was restless. She got up, found the silver needle on the sole of her shoe, pricked it twice, and the man instantly fainted in his arms. She quickly dressed him neatly and looked at the disappearing palace guard sand. This handsome man gave it to herself for the first time, and she should be responsible for him, but now she cannot be caught, otherwise it will be a joke. She tidied up quickly and heard the next door being pushed open. She just breathed a sigh of relief, but what the other person said made her wary. Chapter 2. Being disgusted at home. You are listening at Novel Full.Audio. Master, that person ran away. We finally managed to deceive him. He gave us a deposit of 2,000 taels. If we can't get it done, I'm afraid. That voice was sharp and piercing, and it sounded like an experienced madam. Fang Ningran hid in the dark, feeling a surge of doubt in her heart. Is this the scene of capturing Du Shilang? But the book describes Du Shilang as eloping, not being deceived. Isn't it him? Or maybe Du Shilang ran away and was scammed back. 2,000 taels sold to someone else. Besides Du Shilang, who else would look so beautiful in this place where birds don't poop? Forget it, he can't take him away and can only come another day to redeem him. After all, having taken someone for the first time, being a righteous person is essential. The facade continued. To live is to see people, to die is to see corpses, to do things with money, there is no reason not to do so. The voice revealed a cruel and ruthless tone. Yes. When the person in the next room walked away, Fang Ningran glanced at the charming face on the ground and really wanted to kiss it again. Fang Ningran gave herself a big mouth. What did she think? Didn't you hear that you wanted to see the corpse? We still need to find a way to rescue him. The system is currently unusable, so we have to flip through the window. Fang Ningran tied the cloth in this room together and slowly let the man down, pulling the strip of cloth and jumping down from the window. Escaping from the kiln, Fang Ningran felt that the air outside was fresh. She carried the man behind her back and found an inn, paid the rent for 2 days, and went up to the second floor. Opened the door, quickly entered the room, and placed the man on the bed. Looking at his handsome face, a complex emotion surged in Fang Ningran's heart. "Hey, you're really heavy. You're thin, you're muscular." She muttered to herself and then began to carefully examine the man. His facial features are deep and three-dimensional, his skin is fair as jade, and his figure is slender and powerful. But at this moment, he was unconscious, causing Fang Ningran to feel a wave of worry. After covering the man with a blanket, Fang Ningran had time to look around the room. She saw bronze mirrors and was curious about what she looked like. However, when she got closer, she took a few steps back in fear and said, "Oh my God! Where are the monsters?" I saw a blue birthmark on her left face and a red spot on her right face, which is really impressive. A wave of doubt and unease surged in her heart. "Yuelao, are you sure that my ghostly appearance can have a marriage relationship with the female master?" But the more she looked at it, the more wrong it became. She felt it through her pulse, which was a precursor to poisoning. The poison seemed to be brought from the womb, but now, besides offending the county magistrate and the princess, who would be so ruthless? Forget it, go to the pharmacy to get some medicine first, go back and boil it for a drink. As long as it can relieve symptoms, it will take 2 to 3 days to return to normal. She came to the bedside again and looked at the man with nostalgia. "Little Xianggong, you wait for me to redeem you." Fang Ningran left behind a few taels of silver and reminded again, "You must wait for me. I know how important reputation is for men in this era. Just wait for me 1 more day. She will talk to him first tomorrow, and then talk to the madam. Making money is the most important thing right now." Fang Ningran walked away from the inn with 3 turns, and the man on the bed suddenly opened his eyes. He instinctively saw that face last night, with red and blue birthmarks. Under his eyes, there was a faint blush that concealed a bloodthirsty and violent aura. As he looked at his disappearing figure, his pupils and eyes tightened, like the frost of winter. Is Fang Ningran right? He carefully examined the surrounding environment. Is this an inn? Didn't he be deceived by Jean Lainer to the Red Chamber? Did she save him? "Young master, this is the dress that a young lady ordered to send to you." The waiter walked in respectfully. "Put it down." When the waiter went out, he rolled up his sleeve, and the place where the palace sand was kept was a fair mess. It ultimately couldn't be saved. Fang Ningran went to the pharmacy to grab medicine and returned to Laowu village based on her memory. She is planning to do a big job and go to the Red Chamber tomorrow to redeem Du Shilang. Just arrived at the village entrance, and saw the village full of spring. Under the old locust tree, a group of old women pointed, but Fang Ningran ignored them and quickened her steps towards the direction of home. In the book, Fang Ningran has a master's wife, an elder aunt, a second aunt, and a third aunt in her family. Both of them have married husbands, and the third aunt has been married to the town. It is said that her mother came to visit her, but she has no mother. It is said that her father gave birth to her, and her mother died. The village says she killed her own mother. Who would pay attention to a dying cannon fodder's family? My own father has been bullied by my uncles since my mother left, but I don't know how he has been in recent years. Fang Ningran arrived at a house built on a thatched shed, where the thatched eaves had corroded and could easily leak rain. There is a courtyard outside, and the peach blossoms are blooming brightly, as if welcoming her back. She stopped and focused. It was here. She slowly pushed open the courtyard door, and the person sweeping the yard turned around when they heard the commotion. They were surprised to see that it was her, and threw the broom in their hand at her feet with a disdainful expression on their face. They said, "It's been 3 years, hasn't it been long since the corpse was collected? You're not dead yet. Sweep the floor before you're dead." Sweeper Star. Yes, the original owner also had a nickname called Sweeper Star, because he had killed his mother and was ugly, unable to marry a husband and burdened the whole family. It is her aunt who detests her so much, because she is a girl doll, ugly and destined to not marry at the age of 18. At that time, the whole family will be punished, so these people all hope that she will die in prison. Fang Ningran kicked away the broom and said, "Where are my master and milk?" In her memory, every time the original owner submitted the money, Yi and Nai had a good attitude. Auntie Fang Damao turned around, crossed her hips with both hands, and said disdainfully, "Do you think someone will feel sorry for you when your grandfather comes back? Bah. If I ask you to leave this house, then you have to leave. Look at you, you're still flirting with men like a scholar. It's okay now, with a half-dead ghost-like appearance. I'll tell you, there's no place for you here anymore. Go as far as possible." Fang Ningran glared at her with sharp eyes, stepped on the broomstick, hooked her toes, and the broomstick reached her hand. She kept sweeping Fang Damao with a broom, choking him to the point where he hid inside and dared not come out. Fang Ningran watched as she closed the door and threw away the broom in her hand. "Little sample, fight with me, and then let you eat a lot of dust." Congratulations to the master for being lazy again. Totaling 82 times upon hearing the sound, she returned to the familiar and unfamiliar room, carefully examining everything before. Apart from a bed and a wardrobe, there was nothing else in the room. The blanket on the bed is made of reed flowers and feels very damp to the touch. There is a bucket on the ground, followed by a little water. Looking up, one can see the sun at a glance. She took out the silver from her arms, and there were still 370 taels left. She probably won more than 100 taels, and the rest was stolen from the newly entered prisoner. Even if you come out, you need silver for self-defense. She remembers in the book that Du Shilang ultimately needed 2,000 taels to redeem himself, so how can she earn that silver? Ice dog. Got it. On the way back just now, I saw a lot of fish in the river. You can catch them and sell them. How many fish do we have to sell for 2,000 taels? No, I have to go into the red chamber tomorrow to see how he's doing on the street. Just do as you please. Fang Ningran prepared a big bucket and found a net to block the chicken coop. This way, she should be able to catch fish. As soon as I walked out of the door, I met Yinai and her father. Ranran. Fang Ningran smiled slightly and felt excited. Dad. If it weren't for holding something in her hand, she would really want to hug this father who has lost his daughter. This is the best person in the family to the original owner after the mother left. When she saw the woman behind the man, she shouted, "Grandpa's milk is back. Did you just enter the house like this?" Fang Yunfen immediately pulled down her face as she saw Fang Ningran come out of the room. "You wait." After a while, a pot of grass and trees was lit and placed on the ground. Fang Yunfen rushed to Fang Ningran and said, "Step over." Fang Ningran knew it might be a custom, so she silently followed suit. Fang Yunfen dipped banana leaves in rice water and casually sprinkled a few times on her body. "All right, you can enter the house now." Although milk is dull to her, at least she is the only second granddaughter in this family, and the rest are grandsons, so even if it's worse, there's still 50% left. But if there are many girls, I'm afraid there won't be much for her. Fang Ningran shook her head and said, "Milk, I'm going to the river to catch fish and sell it in the county." Chapter 3. Fish obediently enter the net. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Old Juan put down his hoe and his words were full of profound meaning. That fish is so clever. If it were really easy to catch, it would have been caught long ago. You can rest, don't cause trouble again and burn high incense. Although her grandfather is afraid of milk, he is usually quite kind, but he is particularly timid. Although the family has not been wealthy, he always has no choice but to be stubborn and domineering towards his aunt and second aunt. Fang Laosi looked at his daughter with half a hint of joy and half a worry. Ranran, you're still alive. It's really good. When you come back, just calm down for a while. We've never seen any fish on the way, so you're probably starving. Dad will make pancakes for you right away. His voice was filled with concern for his daughter. Dad, no need, I'll be back soon. Fang Ningran insisted on going out, so everyone had to follow her. Arriving at the small river, Fang Ningran saw a lot of fish and scattered a net, all of which came up were river crossing vines. Sprinkle another net, it's still the same. Is it possible that you have encountered a ghost hitting a wall? Are there many fish there? Fang Ningran didn't believe in evil, rolled up her pants and went down the river to catch fish. The more she caught them, the harder it became to catch them. These fish seemed to have been trained and slipped out of her hands countless times. She was exhausted from exhaustion, but still persevered. In the end, she stood up and kicked the bucket. Fang Zi didn't trust his daughter and ran out. Seeing that his daughter had gained nothing, he felt relieved and said, "This fish is very strange. I didn't see any before, but now there are so many. If it were so easy to catch, then the river would have been gone long ago." Fang Ningran was extremely tired. She was overloaded today and collapsed on the ground, looking at the large bucket next to her and sighing. Oh, if only the fish had dropped into the bucket themselves. Fang Zi joked, "Why don't you say how good it would be to have them turned directly into silver?" However, just as the words fell, something magical happened. The wooden barrel seemed to have become the target of the fish, one after another drilling into the barrel, several of which collided with the barrel and passed out, drifting to the edge of the barrel. Fang Ningran widened her eyes and looked at the scene before her. She simply threw the net beside the bucket, preferably with another net. In a moment, the fish obediently entered the net as if they could understand the language. Fang Ningran was stunned. Fang Zi looked incredulous as he rubbed his eyes. The net in the wooden bucket was full of fish. He asked in a daze, "Ranran, is this really true?" Fang Ningran has never seen this phenomenon before, but they naturally feel that it is a good thing. She nodded and said, "It's true, Dad. Let's quickly put it away. When others see it, they'll turn red." There are over 300 households in this village, with only the village chiefs and the hunters' households repairing the tiled houses. Everything else is doing average. Can't you still be envious when you see this? Fang Zi regained his senses and quickly put away the net. The wooden bucket was already large, and Fang Ningran couldn't carry it at all. She saw the basket on Yuan Laoxi's back. "Dad, give me your backpack." Fang Ningran took off the basket on his back, set it aside, and continued to lay it apart. Seeing that there were no fish on the calm water surface, Fang Ningran rolled her eyes and took out 30 copper coins from her arms, handing them to Fang Zi. "Dad, go help me borrow a cart." Fang Zi has been hiding money for 3 years for only 81. This girl was released from prison and gave him 31. Where did this girl get the money? Thinking that my daughter was so smart, she shouldn't have done anything wrong, but she felt inexplicably sad. 3 years ago, a month ago, they were asked to collect the body, but the county magistrate refused. In the end, this matter came to an end. He thought he would never see his daughter again, but now he has a connection. He stood up and said firmly, "Dad went to Aunt Lu's house to borrow money. If he went to borrow money from the next door, he would be caught by Milk. Your Milk thought I was going to cut pig grass. She can do whatever you want, but she won't do it with me." After speaking, Fang Zi ran away. Fang Ningran looked at his departing figure with a happy expression on her face and said, "Don't worry, I'll cover it up for your father in the future." "Congratulations, Master. You've been lazy again," a total of 83 times. Fang Ningran's mouth corners slightly raised, so laziness is really a blessing. When Fang Zi borrowed the ox cart, Fang Ningran was surrounded by fish, weighing several hundred pounds. He said happily, "The girl must be going to sell fish. Dad even borrowed a scale for you." Fang Ningran took the wooden scale, tray, and iron scale. Fortunately, she had used this engraved scale in the laboratory before, otherwise she didn't know how to use it. Do you want to go with me? I don't know how to ride a cart. Fang Laosi was surprised and said, don't you know how to drive a car? Even a carriage can run smoothly. Fang Ningran scratched her head and casually lied, it's been 3 years, I've forgotten what it feels like to drive. Although she is a novice with a driver's license and has memories of driving a bull cart in her mind, there are still differences between a small car and a bull cart, as well as between reality and memory. What if she can't catch up and fall into a ditch? In the original owner's memory, driving was taught by her father, so there should be no problem. Moreover, it was because he helped someone drive to Boudha temple and earn 51 that he ruined their good deeds, imprisoned for 3 years, and even lost his life. Forget it, let me do it. You may be unfamiliar too. Fang Laosi looked at the 2 birthmarks on Fang Ningran's face. No one would pretend to be such a daughter. Fang Laosi carried the fish onto the ox cart and sat at the front, while Fang Ningran sat at the back. The ox cart slowly drove towards the county. Half an hour later, noon had passed, and Fang Ningran rubbed her stomach, feeling hungry. It was estimated that her father would be even more hungry. She casually bought 5 buns on the roadside, took one herself, and handed the rest to Fang Laosi. Dad, let's eat some first, otherwise we'll get even hungry when we're busy later. Dad is not hungry, just one is enough. Fang Laosi took one, and although he couldn't bear to part with the money, even though his daughter had already bought it, he couldn't bear to scold. He took the steamed bun and took a bite, tears rolling in his eyes. My daughter has grown up. At the entrance of the vegetable market, Fang Laosi parked his cart and Fang Ningran got off and asked about the price everywhere. Unexpectedly, in 3 years, prices have risen and the people have become increasingly poor. In the original owner's memory, fish only cost 9 won, but now it's 16 won. Come and take a look, fresh crucian carp, silver carp, grass carp. 15 won per kilogram. She kept shouting, but no one paid attention. Fang Ningran understood and decided to sit on the side. Jiang Taigong, who was willing to fish, was hooked, and what she wanted to buy would naturally come. Immediately, a woman walked over with her child and said, are they all 15 won per kilogram? I want crucian carp to make soup for the child. Fang Laosi smiled repeatedly and said, yes, it's my first time coming today. It's all 15 won. Do you want a bigger one or a smaller one? A bigger one. 3 pieces are enough. Okay, 3 crucian carp, a total of 2 pounds and 8 liang. I'll charge you 42 won. The woman paid for it, but people came one after another. Fang Laosi was too busy, so Fang Ningran helped. In the end, there were only 80 pounds left. The restaurant bought 40 pounds, and the landlord's family bought 40 pounds to entertain the guests. Fang Ningran excitedly counted the silver in her hand, more than 300 pounds of fish, and only earned more than 50 or 20 taels of silver. She wilted again. How can we make up for 2,000 taels? Fang Laosi, who didn't know the details, was particularly happy. He didn't expect his daughter to earn so much money in just such a short amount of time, which was the family's annual expenses. Seeing his daughter's distressed expression, he mistakenly thought she was worried about the family. He advised, don't be afraid, Ranran. Dad has kept 2 silver carp, and he will be happy to bring them back to serve meat and milk. Ding, congratulations to the master for being lazy again, a total of 84 times. Fang Ningran knew that she was suitable for slacking off, but in her previous life she was exhausted, so slacking off in this life is reasonable. Thinking that she still had to go to the red chamber, she stopped Fang Laosi and said, Dad, take the fish back first, return the cart, and I have to go buy something. Maybe I'll come back later. You don't have to wait for me to eat. Hey, you. Fang Laosi looked at his daughter's departure with a worried expression on his face. Chapter 4. The True Du Shilang. You are listening at Novel Full.Audio. Fang Ningran first went to the inn, but the shopkeeper said that the person left after she left, and the room money and deposit were also refunded to him. After only half a day, he ran away and probably returned to the Red Chamber. Fortunately, I didn't come back tomorrow. She hurried towards the Red Chamber. When she arrived at the Red Chamber, the madam looked at her in confusion and said, "Aren't you on the second floor? Why did you come in from outside again?" Fang Ningran smiled and said, "I don't sound good. I went out, but after thinking about it, I still want to see Du Shilang." The madam gave her a shrewd glance and probed, "Why do you want to see Du Shilang? Are you going to marry him?" Du Shilang had a private meeting with someone in the middle of last night and only brought him back this afternoon. Why did this person marry him? Is it just because of being ugly that no one wants it? Fang Ningran saw disdain in his eyes and said, "You see, I'm not good looking, so naturally I hope my child looks good. Can you tell me, how much does it cost to redeem myself? How dare you ask me how much I want? Even if I open 1,000 taels, you may not be able to afford it. Deal." Fang Ningran felt happy in her heart, and she lost another 1,000 taels, taking another step toward success. She took out 300 taels and handed them to the madam. "This is 300 taels of deposit. I'll take a look at the people first, and I'll go back and get the rest for you." The madam was stunned for a moment. She had never seen such an ugly person before, but she thought that her top card no longer had the palace guardian sand, and it didn't make much sense to stay. Although there was reluctance, it was better to create a new top card. Moreover, the master does not allow any more mistakes. She took the silver and turned to leave, saying, "Come with me." Once again, I arrived at the familiar courtesan's room and slowly pushed the door in. I saw a person lying on the bed, covered in whiplash marks, covered in bruises, and not covered in a blanket. She hurriedly ran over and said, "Didn't I ask you to wait for me at the inn? Why did you come back on your own and still suffer so much?" The injury was not finished yet, and Fang Ningran was stunned. "Who is this?" The man on the bed also looked at her in surprise, somewhat disgusted, weak and alert, and asked, "Who are you?" Then he said again, "No matter who you are or how much money you have given, do you think I can serve you like this?" Fang Ningran instinctively pulled his arm, but he didn't have any palace guard sand. She stood up and asked, "Where is the flower leader Du Shilang?" The man was surprised for a moment and then sneered, "You're looking for me, but you don't know me. It's really a big joke." Fang Ningran sat down and carefully looked at the man in front of him. He tilted his head slightly, his cold white face stained with a little blood, and a few strands of broken hair hanging down on his forehead, appearing lonely and fragile. He slowly closed his eyes, his eyebrows suddenly tightened, and his pale lips slowly pursed, as if enduring immense pain. It seemed that the madam had done her best. "Are you really Du Shilang?" she asked again. "Since the girl doesn't know me, don't talk to me. Let's go, girl." After he finished speaking, he remained silent. In the book, it is said that he eloped with a woman, but the woman was unwilling to elope. The woman later became a scholar, passed the imperial examination, and relied on his maternal family to climb up to the position of the Minister of Revenue. However, Du Shilang did not receive timely treatment due to being beaten and did not conceive, and died early. What if I help them now? Fortunately, it's not Du Shilang, otherwise I would have broken up the unfortunate Mandarin duck myself, and this person would hate her to death. As her thoughts turned, she smiled and said, "Isn't this for the sake of being more certain? I'm here to help someone redeem you." Sure enough, Du Shilang heard someone and suddenly opened his eyes. "For whom?" "For a woman. Don't you want to stay together forever? Did Wan come to you?" Seeing his surprised expression, Fang Ningran was about to speak when he muttered to himself, "Impossible. Wan has been a beggar since childhood, and she has nothing. What can she take as a ransom? Nowadays, my dad has taken away a lot of things from me, and I can't take out the money either. Finally, he raised his head and asked, how many thousand taels do you need to redeem yourself? Fang Ningran only knew that the girl ended up winning the imperial examination and becoming a courtesan, but she didn't know that she was still just a beggar now. 1,000 taels, I gave 300 taels, there's still 700 taels left. Wait a moment, I'll go and gather some more. I'll come find you later. Fang Ningran finished speaking and was about to leave, but her arm was tightly grabbed. He took out 300 taels from his waistband and handed them to her, that's all I have. Fang Ningran didn't expect a few words, so he gave her everything. She knew that he was not trusting, but playing a game. She said how they finally had the money to take the exam. It turned out that this person was still hiding private money. I'll help you, I'll come back tonight. After speaking, Fang Ningran walked out. Open the door, the madam is still standing at the door, he has to guard, after all, there are still hundreds of taels left to give. Fang Ningran looked at his sneaky appearance and smiled, madam is also a businessman, why don't you believe him? Give me 2 hours, I'll go back and get the money. He must give me everything in good condition. Hurry up and find a doctor to show him, otherwise what if I'm not dead yet? Didn't you come for 2 hours? If you haven't received the money, it's up to you. Fang Ningran went downstairs in a bad mood. The madam looked inside with peace of mind and instructed the thug beside her, go find a doctor for him, don't add any bad luck. Yes. The thug and the madam both left, and Shilang only opened his eyes. He can only wait now. Fang Ningran ran out of the red chamber, unable to find a quick way to make money everywhere, until she walked into the noisy casino, where she entered in a daze and covered her face. On the left, come, bet big, bet small. On the right, gambling chicken, General Hongwei fights against the hegemon. Ahead, hurry up, buy a pair or a single, get ready. Fang Ningran arrived at General Hongwei on the right to fight against the hegemon. General Hongwei was going to die or die, and the hegemon seemed to dominate the side. Obviously, the hegemon would win. Fang Ningran took out 10 taels and threw them at the overlord. She placed the money on General Hongwei's plate, ready to push it to the overlord. The waiter shouted, buy it and leave. That's it, 10 liang is in soup. Immediately, the two fighting chickens started fighting. Fang Ningran dare not open her eyes, probably Hongwei was beaten and couldn't get up. How about we just barely take a look? With everyone shouting fiercely, Fang Ningran glanced at her with one eye open and one eye closed. She opened her eyes in surprise and stared at the size of the copper bell. General Hongwei unexpectedly killed the hegemon in a flash. Fang Ningran quickly applauded and cheered for it, not sure if it understood or what, crushing the hegemon and unable to get up. General Hongwei won this battle. Surprisingly, I won, and everyone bought the overlord. Isn't that why I split half with the casino? Looking at the silver that the waiter skimmed over with a bamboo block, Fang Ningran was overjoyed. This girl is really lucky. Everyone started praising her. Fang Ningran was not fond of fighting, so she packed up over 100 taels of silver and went to buy big and small places. Chapter 5. Making Money. You are listening at Novel Full.Audio. Arriving at the table, she observed for several rounds and then placed 100 taels in the larger area. As for why, because buying big places is close. The person who was fighting cockfighting together just now walked over and saw her release 100 taels. They advised, Miss, you bet all of this on it. If you lose it, it won't be enough. Look, everyone's betting on the smaller ones. Fang Ningran felt it was very reasonable, and the words of the lady were also spoken in her heart, but she found that the lazier she was, the more money she could make. So let's be lazy. Expand. Turn it on. Turn it on. Everyone has different opinions. 5, 5, 6, open up. Hey. Hee hee. With everyone's excited and disappointed voices, Fang Ningran won more than 300 taels and returned when everyone thought that Fang Ningran would be raised again. Her eyes were full of exploration, and she hesitated for a moment. The lady beside her was extremely anxious and said, "Miss, which one is better to bet on this time?" Fang Ningran naturally couldn't tell her. When she went out to the casino, she thought she was ruining the situation. All she wanted was to win some money and not offend anyone at will. "I won't suppress it this time, you guys suppress it. I'll go take a look elsewhere." Fang Ningran came back to the cockfighting place just now. This time it was General Hongwei's battle against the fierce king. She squeezed in and put 400 taels on the plate of the fierce king. Everyone laughed at her and said, "Miss, you won just now. General Hongwei has won 4 times, but you actually bought it and lost this time. You may have chosen the wrong one this time." Fang Ningran smiled and said, "It's just for fun, just lose." In fact, she really doesn't know if the fierce king will win, she just thinks that General Hongwei must be tired. Buy it and leave, the big battle begins. "Go on, Hongwei. Meng Wang, come on." She was the only one in the room shouting, "Fierce king, come on." The sound overwhelmed many people. Hey! With waves of sighs. The fierce king has won. Ding! Congratulations to the master for being lazy 3 times, totaling 87 times. There are another 13 times when the system will officially start. May the master continue to work hard. Fang Ningran achieved her wish, and in addition to 400 taels, she also earned over 700 taels this time. She knew she couldn't be addicted to war and avoid being noticed by her boss. But I didn't know that those eyes on the second floor had been staring at her for a long time, and she was actually the mastermind behind this casino. It also means that you came to find me today. But today you're at the casino. It seems like he's just a thug. Master, why don't you go down and take care of her? The man raised his hand to stop him and said, "Now prepare the food. You should investigate carefully and not startle the snake." Yes. The two watched as Fang Ningran left, and a warrior followed him. After leaving the casino, she passed by a tavern and saw someone fighting crickets. Curiously, she ran in, looking like 2 wealthy ladies. But I don't know anyone either. It's better not to provoke such a person. She bought a pot of xiaojiu and 2 pounds of pig head meat, and went back to drink some wine under the milk. Fang Ningran found a carriage and returned to Du Shilang's house in the Red Chamber. Du Shilang knew he had made the right bet. Fang Ningran handed over 700 taels of pastry and glanced at the pastries on the table, saying, "Father Hua, why don't you give me these 2 plates of pastry instead? How about treating them as a wedding gift for me?" The madam smiled and counted the money, putting it in her arms, and said earnestly, "It's all a small matter." Anan packed these 2 plates of pastries and added 2 more plates of pastries, 1 roasted chicken, 1 roasted duck, 1 plate of peanuts, and a pot of Yunnan spring wine. It's also considered to have completed this new couple. "Thank you, Dad. Just wait for me at the door." Okay. Then I won't disturb you guys to tidy up." As Fang Ningran watched the madam leave happily, she sneered inwardly. Of course, after scraping off her belongings, there are only a few sets of clothes left. What else can I do to tidy up? Fang Ningran helped Du Shilang up and saw him dismantle the wood on the bed, which contained a jade pendant. Yes, it's this thing, an important object for family recognition. It seems that this person is quite smart. He handed over the jade pendant and said, "My benefactor, this thing can be considered as collateral for you. We will definitely repay your silver." Fang Ningran felt uncomfortable listening to this. She didn't want him to repay the money. What she wanted was more friends, more helpers, and a thigh. Although this thigh may not necessarily twist over the arm, it is also possible to break the arm. Fang Ningran said lightly, "Am I saving you because you want to repay me? I'll take this thing and the carriage is at the door. I'll take you to find her. However, I don't know where she lives. She lives in a slum." Du Shilang pursed his lips and opened his mouth. Fang Ningran carried a bundle and helped Du Shilang onto the carriage. There were indeed roasted chicken, braised duck, and wine on the carriage. Upon smelling them, there was no problem. "These 2 packets of pastries, roasted chicken, and wine are your wedding gifts. I will take them back to my family to taste." Du Shilang didn't know how to thank him, but weakly smiled. In a moment of burning incense, the carriage arrived at the slums, where the houses were dilapidated and each person had a large room, where they burned, cooked, and slept. The people here all poked their heads and looked around when they saw a carriage coming. The carriage arrived at the innermost room, which was very clean and tidy. The door was open, and a woman was cooking on the ground. Du Shilang hoarsely shouted from the carriage, "Asked her." The woman looked at him in surprise, her eyes full of excitement. "Shilang." She threw the fan and ran out. Du Shilang couldn't get off the carriage, so Fang Ningran got off the carriage and gave way to her seat. The 2 of them chatted on the carriage for a while. As it was getting dark, Su Yuan got off the carriage and went to the house to extinguish the fire. He invited Fang Ning to dye the carriage. "My benefactor, let the carriage go to the flower street. I have a house there. My wet father is there." Fang Ningran didn't expect him to have a nanny and found it unbelievable. "I have been dependent on my dad since I was young, but he has lost his memory, so I don't know who I am or where my home is. At the end of last year, my dad suddenly lost his sight and I was tricked into going to the Red Chamber. Thanks to Wanwan these days, otherwise I wouldn't even know what would happen if my dad found out. Later, if you see my dad, tell him you're our friend. I've already started a family and moved in together now. Thank you very much." Fang Ningran didn't expect Du Yuan to live such a difficult life. She asked, "Didn't you think of going to find your parents?" Du Yuan smiled and said, "Don't mention it." Fang Ningran saw that the others were unwilling to say anything and could only give up. She looked at Su Yuan and said, "Do you want to go and study?" Su Yuan sighed and said, "It's impossible for us to go to school due to our family background. Our nanny can't see us and we need someone to take care of us." "What if I can help you get into school?" asked Fang Ningran. "Anyway, she doesn't want to go to school anymore in this life. She's a mess and has good medical skills. Just take revenge and support herself and her family." She took out 300 taels that Du Yuan had given her before and said, "These 300 taels belong to their rightful owners. You guys should eat something delicious, buy some clothes, and the rest should go to school." Su Yuan travels through the streets and alleys, knowing a lot of words and also understanding many social customs. Although he is 18 years old, he will definitely become a scholar in August this year after learning from a good master for half a year. "How about what's in the book?" "My benefactor, we don't know how to repay you," Su Yuan said gratefully. Fang Ningran smiled and said, "We are all pitiful people, just treat me like a friend." The benefactor still doesn't know their surname and who. "My name is Fang Ningran." The 2 nodded. Chapter 6. Thinking about getting her to marry a widower. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Arriving at the Du family, the nanny Wang was eating the already cold noodles, and there were no lights in the room. She was somewhat shocked by the sudden return of the 2. "Yuan, you're back." "Daddy, I'm back. We'll live together from now on." Du Yuan looked at the wet father waving his hands in the air, and tears were about to burst into his eyes. Fang Ningran carefully observed Wang's eyes and found that he was invisible due to poisoning. Wang appeared to be only 30.7 or 8 years old, but was extremely haggard. She grabbed Wang's hand and kept probing his pulse, only to find that he was actually poisoned like her. Is it possible that he is also related to the Minister of War? Impossible, it's not written in the book. Fang Ningran pulled Du Yuan aside and whispered, I can treat your father's illness, but it will take me a few days. Du Yuan was very surprised and said, really? Then he thought to himself, my benefactor, can we delay it for a few days? I don't want my dad to see that I'm injured all over. Okay, I won't disturb your reunion today. I have to hurry home and come back to see you in a few days. Su Yuan quickly packed half of the roasted chicken and said, girl, take this back. Come and get together another day. Fang Ningran didn't refuse either. She took the roasted chicken, gave the coachman 2 taels of silver, and took her to the entrance of Laowu village. She returned home with roasted wine and food. Pushing open the courtyard door, the whole family was in the yard. Seeing her enter, they stared at her in amazement. Fang Damiao was the first to say, oh, do you still know that the broom star has returned? I thought I was in jail again. Upon seeing her return, Fang Yunfen glanced at the object she was carrying in her hand, stood up, patted her legs, and walked towards the stove. When you come back, let's eat. Fang Ningran also brought things to the stove, only to see her father patching clothes in front of the stove. Dad, I'm back. Upon seeing her return, Fang Laosi immediately threw the needle into the thread, put down his clothes, and stood up. Dad, I bought some pig head meat. You can drink wine with me later. Okay. Faced with his lost and regained daughter, Fang Laosi could only be happy. Fang Yunfen saw her tossing so many things, but frowned slightly and said, girl, where did you get this thing? Fang Ningran slaughtered the roasted chicken while answering, milk, I went to sell fish today and earned some money. Fang Yunfen swallowed her saliva and said, even silver should be saved from flowers. Fang Ningran left a pack of pastries for herself and her father, and then took out a pack of pastries. After she brought the food to the table, she saw what her father had just brought from the kitchen. At this moment, there are 2 pots of fish and 1 braised fish on the table, as well as stir-fried preserved meat with garlic sprouts. Although the quantity is not large, it is indeed fragrant. There is also sauce duck. In Fang Ningran's memory, this sauce duck was only made when every household smoked cured meat at the end of the year. Before, the family usually made 4, but how many did they make last year? This thing is only eaten during the busy farming season or when there are visitors. The table was full of vegetables, and Fang Yunfen couldn't serve it. Others couldn't serve it, and men couldn't serve it. Her grandfather needs to see how her breasts feel, and neither of her 4 uncles nor Mr. Fang can sit at the table. With this in mind, Fang Ningran suggested, milk, there are only 5 women in our family. Let our father and uncle eat together at the table, and give the 3 children a bowl. This long table is just right for us to squeeze together. Fang Yunfen nodded. This family was already poor, and the eldest and second aunts even married each other. The 5 big men were eating at the table for the first time. Fang Damiao and Fang Yurom were already drooling over the meat, and as soon as they served it, they began to devour it like bandits. Fang coughed and they only managed to restrain a little. A few men were also afraid to pick up dishes from afar. Fang Ningran put some pig head meat in each person's bowl and fish in his father's bowl before they started eating. Milk married a house, gave birth to an aunt, left, and then remarried Yi. Auntie has 2 sons, one is already married, the other is only 6 years old, and there is also a daughter named Fang Zi, who is the same age as her. She has not spoken to her until now. However, her family was poor because she had to go to school. Ergu has 2 sons, 7 and 12 years old. They actually called her sister instead of calling her ugly like Dagu. She looked at her brothers and brought out the pastries around her, saying, come on, eat 1 piece each, everyone has a share. After one person took a piece, Fang Zi muttered softly, ugly 8 monsters can be good people. Fang Ningran smiled and placed the plate in front of Fang, saying, since my sister doesn't like it, let's give it to the milk. Fang Yunfen glanced at Fang Zi and then at Fang Ningran. She put down her wine glass and said, you two are 3 months apart. Zia will be 18 next month, and Ranran will be 18 3 months later. I only have 2 granddaughters, and neither of you has a husband now. What are your plans? Fang Zi put down her chopsticks and couldn't wait to say, Milk, your granddaughter is about to take the exam. Don't be distracted. If you win, you need to prepare for the exam. In the future, you may not be sure who will be interested in you. What should you do if you ask your granddaughter to abandon her husband and son? What about Ranran? Fang Yunfen always feels that today's granddaughter is different. Fang Ningran remained silent for a moment and said, Milk, my granddaughter wants to earn more money these few months. When the boat reaches the bridge, it will naturally go straight. I can't say I want revenge. Fang Yunfen seemed to be thinking and didn't speak up, but Fang Dumiao seized the opportunity and said, Mom, if you ask me, I have to go to October to pay. Let Zia prepare well for the exam. As for this broom girl, she should have found a husband for her earlier. 3 years ago, there was a widower in his 30s who was going to marry him. He still married 50 taels of it, otherwise we would have sold 20 taels in December. How can we get it? Upon seeing Fang's expression, Fang Dumiao immediately changed his address. Fang Ningran glared angrily at Fang Dumiao and said, Did you have a mental illness? Can't you find any medicine to take? Can't anyone save you? You've been in a daze all day. You want to marry so much, so pick up your tattered cotton wool and live at his house. After all, you're about the same age as him. If you don't want me to marry, why don't you let your family, Fang Zi, take over from you? Fang Yunfen glanced at Fang Dumiao and said, All right, since she's back, let's treat her as a person. Before, Ranran also made contributions at home and worked as a driver to earn money. Why didn't you speak up when you paid? Today, she even went to sell fish, so I think she already has her own plans. Okay, in 3 months' time, if you can't pass the exam, marry me a husband. If you can't make money, listen to me. No one is allowed to resist. After all, Fang Ningran still has her own grandfather blowing a little pillow side wind. Although she is ugly, there are few girls in her family. Besides, 3 years ago, Fang Ningran also learned to read, work, drive, and work with her second aunt. She earns hundreds of won per month, all of which are paid in. She still wondered why milk was so easy to talk about this time, so she thought it was just waiting for the money to be paid for selling fish. This time, Fang Ningran didn't want to turn it in. Her money didn't support those idle people who looked down on her, let alone a few months later, she was just thinking about marrying a widower. She casually took out 2 taels of silver and placed them on the table, pointing fingers and cursing, saying, Milk, I will have to raise my husband when I make money in the future. This is the money I used to sell fish today, which is equivalent to showing filial piety to your elderly family. I won't pay the silver in the future, anyway, they also look down on me at home. Chapter 7. Understanding Bird Language. You are listening at novel full.audio. Fang Yunfen was stunned for a moment, then patted the table and said, Are you trying to split up? Have you ever thought about the consequences? If you can't make money, who would be willing to marry you? If Zia can't get into the scholar exam, one of us will have to go to the army next year, and if you don't, you'll have to give 50 taels. Do you have that? Can't you leave a queen for our Fang family as soon as possible? Fang Ningran sneered, so she was waiting for her here. Just to marry her husband early and stay behind. When she earns money, what is 50 taels? She can marry whoever she wants. Who cares about those who don't want to marry? Milk, if you really want to split the family, you can also split the family. Anyway, my aunt doesn't treat me well, and my second aunt is about the same. After dividing the family, you can treat me as dead. It's not a big deal to make things difficult to listen to. What's the big deal about it? It's not rough to speak. Fang Yinfen patted the table again and said, "Bastard, your mother is still a burden. If you want to split up, I'm not dead yet." Fang Ningran muttered, "It's too late when you die." "What are you saying?" Fang Yinfen was furious and shouted loudly. Fang Laosi quickly tugged at his daughter and said with concern, "Ranran, apologize to Nai. Fang Ningran has already eaten enough, let's treat this meal as a farewell dinner. Milk, if we split up, we would be two families. If I were the only woman in our family, I would be exempt from conscription. Do you think splitting up is for my own good? If we split the house, if there are many of you, we can split it into 2 rooms and grow vegetables on 2 plots of land. We don't want anything else. Okay, this is good." Fang Dumyao was very happy to hear that these 2 people were separated without any food or other benefits. Fang Zi quickly pulled her up. If Fang Ningran were to be separated, wouldn't she have to go to exile? Fang Yunfen looked at Fang Dumyao like a fool and patted the key on the table, saying, "You think it's good, you'll be in charge in the future." Then, Qi rushed away. Fang Dumyao really believed it and put the key in his pocket, saying, "I agree to the separation of families. The 2 vegetable plots behind your house are yours." Fang Ningran was a bit skeptical that things would go so smoothly. "Dad, let's go back. We still have to be busy tomorrow." The wood was already a boat, and Fang Laosi had to listen to his daughter and follow her out. Thinking of the medicine, Fang Ningran said, "Dad, I took the medicine for a few days today, and maybe the birthmark will disappear in a few days. Besides, now that my daughter can make money, don't worry about the separation. Our family will only get better and better in the future." Fang Laosi had to nod, realizing that his daughter had changed a lot since she returned this time. Although her personality remained the same, her thoughts were really different from before. Is it really okay to have a birthmark on my daughter's face since she was young? I'll help you make that medicine, you can rest for a while. Fang Laosi always competes for work. Fang Ningran sighed and said, "Dad, from now on, it's just the 2 of us. You don't have to compete for work anymore. This medicine scores 3 times. If you don't understand, I'll do it myself." "Okay, then." Fang Ningran knew that her father might have been overthinking again, but let him watch and let him endure tomorrow. The next morning Fang Laosi got up early in the morning, but due to the lack of a stove or pot, he decided to go to the town to buy a pot. "Girl, Dad is going to buy a pot in town. Don't run around at home." "Dad, wait for me, let's go together." Fang Ningran had already woken up, folded the bedding, and walked out with the leftover pastries from last night. She waved them in her hand and said, "Dad, let's deal with 2 on the road first." Fang Laosi looked at his daughter and was slightly stunned. The birthmark on her face seemed to have faded a lot. Then, he smiled indulgently and said, "You." Fang Ningran thought of making more money and suggested, "Dad, let's go see if there are any fish left. We can't go to town empty-handed." Fang Laosi felt that the words made sense and immediately went back to the house to bring the backpack and bucket-carrying pole that he had hidden last night. When she arrived at the small river, Fang Ningran was pleasantly surprised to find that there were not only fish in the river, but also crayfish and crayfish. However, without pig liver, it would be difficult to catch them. Forget it, catching fish is the most important thing. Fang Ningran packed her backpack and bucket like yesterday, when 2 pointed white cranes flew over and prepared to pout. Fang Laosi was about to catch up, but Fang Ningran stopped him. "Dad, let them eat, they're also hungry." Fang Laosi no longer stopped, rolled up his pants and went down the river to catch fish. "Girl, you don't need to come down. It's cold in the morning, Dad will come and catch it." Fang Ningran sighed and sat casually by the river, holding a dogtail grass in her mouth. She silently said to herself, "Fish, fish, come quickly." You can buy rice and vegetables. As long as you sell them at a good price, we can all save time. Isn't this guy a fool? Just finished reading, two white cranes came to her side and looked at her twice. Who's talking? Fang Ningran thought it was a system, but the system had not yet been turned on. She sat up and only saw two white cranes staring at her foolishly before the meeting. It seems like a fool. She's quite kind, how could she be a fool? She's not a fool. Who did you see that we don't want to eat our meat? She's the only one who made us eat enough. Fang Ningran was stunned. Can she understand animals talking? Is this a new skill triggered by her? Hello, Xiao Bai, Xiaoma. Two white cranes looked at each other for a moment. Who was her name? Fang Ningran knew they didn't understand and smiled. In the future, you'll be called Xiao Bai and it'll be called Xiaoma. Is that easy to distinguish? Wife, let's go, this human has no fun. She wants to please us, either she wants to eat our meat or she wants our eggs, Xiao Baiha said, giving her a wet expression. Then let's not tell her that our eggs are in the reeds. Yes, don't tell her we have 12 eggs. After speaking, the two cranes flew away. Upon hearing these words, Fang Ningran's face lit up with joy. Among the reeds, there were 12 eggs. As soon as the white crane left, the fish began to splash everywhere, but unfortunately they all landed in the backpack and bucket. In less than half an hour, the guys are all full. Fang Laosi was stunned and asked in a daze, Ran, is this a blurred eye? Fang Ningran quickly tidied up and said with a smile, Dad, if we don't leave anymore, the ox cart will probably have already left. Yes, Dad, go find the ox cart now. Fang Laosi slapped his forehead before realizing that he had not yet borrowed the ox cart. After Fang Laosi left, the prompt rang again. Congratulations, Master. I have successfully been lazy twice, and there are still 11 times left before the system officially starts. After a while, Fang Laosi brought the ox cart and his face was not very good. Fang Ningran frowned slightly and met his eyes. Dad, what happened to you? Fang Laosi took a deep breath and furrowed his eyebrows. Your aunt said 31 is not enough. Today is the market, and their ox cart can earn 1 or 2 silver. Let's give at least 600 won. Fang Ningran's eyes flashed with a slight surprise. Where is she robbing? A cow cart takes half an hour. If you come back and forth, you'll have to wait for more than an hour. A cow cart costs 2 won, with a maximum of 8 people and 2 children. A maximum of 41 per trip, for 4 hours a day, is also a maximum of 161, requiring 601. It's either crazy or crazy. This job only costs 20 won a day. Fang Laosi then let go and said, however, I told her for a long time that I would come back to give her fish tonight. She said that even if we were 151 today, I had already given it to you. It was the money you gave me last night that paid for it. After splitting the family last night, Fang Ningran thought that her father had no money, so she gave him the remaining 3 taels of silver from yesterday's fish sale. Dad, I'm not afraid. When we pass by, I'll go buy a cart. If it doesn't work, I'll buy 2. By the time Fang Ningran spoke, everything had already been loaded onto the cart by Fang Laosi. However, to their shock, the crayfish had escaped from prison and climbed onto the cart on its own, albeit at a slower speed. Fang Laosi was puzzled and said, is there no place left here? Just as the two questioned, the crayfish huddled together to keep warm, squatting like balls in the corners of the basket and bucket. When there was no more space left, the crayfish turned back into the river on their own. Chapter 8. Waste Feast. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Congratulations, Master. You've been lazy again, there are still 10 times left to turn on the system. The sound of the system echoed in Yuan Jiuli's mind. She sat behind the cow's buttocks, while Fang Laosi could only walk with the cow's rope. It was already 4/4 past midnight when Fang Zi arrived in town and started shouting after paying a tax of 6 won. Selling fish, 20 won grass carp, 22 won crucian carp, 15 won white catfish. Today they have to sell at the normal price, otherwise other fish sellers will accuse them of snatching business, disrupting order, and being unfair. Fang Ningran slowly jumped off the carriage, as her legs were already trembling and numb. After she got off the cart, the old ox finally breathed a sigh of relief. This guy has finally come down. The old cow has been holding back more than 10 farts, it should be loosened now. With a faint green smoke, the old cow blinked its eyes. What a pleasure. Fang Ningran is both angry and funny, but she has become a bad person with her. However, it seems that I have been able to hear the sounds of animals since today. Just as she was puzzled, a long queue formed in the back of the cart. Boss, I need 10. Fang Zi was shocked and said, Big brother, can you finish eating? That's it, it's not enough for my family to eat for 2 days. I came here long ago, and everyone said you didn't come. I just waited, but I really waited. In fact, he also bought one yesterday, but unfortunately, his grandson had a fever yesterday and his medication didn't improve. He decided to take his grandson to the doctor after finishing his meal. Thinking that my grandson was not nutritious, I fed him some light fish soup. Unexpectedly, my grandson took a few sips and the more he drank, the more he wanted to drink. The fever miraculously subsided. Today, he specifically asked the old lady to buy fish, which was like a fairy descending to earth, more cost-effective than buying medicine. A total of 43 pounds, 645 won. Here, 1 or 2 silver coins. The old man generously gave the money and happily took the fish. After the old man took the money and left, the others didn't want to fall behind and bought several. When the shopkeeper asked for dozens of pounds yesterday, everyone was unhappy. The shopkeeper waved his hand and said, I want all the fish on the cart. Why? We've been in line for a long time. That's right, if you say, buy all, then buy all. Seeing everyone arguing endlessly, Fang Ningran asked, Shopkeeper, if you want to buy fish, will you buy this little thing? She moved the fish bucket and exposed many small crayfish. What is this thing? I haven't seen it before. The shopkeeper was so scared that he took a few steps back. Fang Ningran smiled and said, Shopkeeper, I heard your restaurant is very big. If you buy crayfish, I will sell it all to you. What am I doing with this bug? I don't want it, I just want fish. The shopkeeper retreated. I want it all together. At this moment, a man wearing a sword walked towards the crowd. Fang Ningran's eyebrows slightly raised, showing a strong curiosity. In this world of women, most men are gentle and weak, and those who hold swords are usually nobles, right? Is it also a traveler? Does he know the mystery and deliciousness of lobster? And then she didn't accept the reversal of the female world, so she dressed up with masculinity. She tentatively asked, does this little prince buy this bug because he knows its origin? How to make it and how to eat it the best? The man shook his head and said, I don't know. I don't know. The crowd burst into laughter and said, I don't know why you joined in the fun. My home is also a restaurant. If you are willing to sell it, I believe you also have a good recipe for this bug. Now you lead me to the restaurant with a cart. If you can make it and sell it well, then our homeowner will definitely benefit from you. Fang Ningran extended 5 fingers and said, this crayfish weighs at least 51 per kilogram. As long as the master is satisfied, this price is not a problem. Last night they just arrived in town, and the restaurant across from them was overcrowded, leaving them without any guests. The owner was so angry that he scolded the shopkeeper and sent someone to investigate the other side, only to find out that everyone was trying to eat fish. Today someone came to report that the shopkeeper was going to buy fish. The master couldn't sit still and asked him to come quickly. He was supposed to send green clothes, but she was straightforward and didn't speak. The master was afraid of scaring them away, so he sent him. After all, holding a sword by a man can cause a lot of controversy, isn't everyone joking about it? Little brother, why don't you embroider and play the piano at home and take a sword to the streets to observe the flowers? Fight for food with our women, go back and call your wife over. Fang Ningran smiled and said, okay, I won't sell anymore. Come back tomorrow, everyone. She didn't wait for everyone to react before pulling the cart, and Fang Laozi quickly caught up. A slight surprise flashed in the man's eyes and he immediately chased after him. Arriving at the Fuman restaurant, the man called the shopkeeper to move the goods and weighed them. Surprisingly, the crayfish weighed 53 pounds. Grass carp weighs 80 pounds, crucian carp weighs 45 pounds, and white catfish weighs 73 pounds. The total amount is over 60 taels of silver, and the shopkeeper will settle the bill on the spot. May I ask your surname, young lady? Little girl surnamed Fang Ningran. Turns out it's Miss Fang. Our chef knows how to make this fish, but we don't know if it's a bug. Our master needs to try selling it again. Fang Ningran smiled slightly and said, 3 chefs make 3 types of fish. Just let one chef learn from me about this crayfish. But I'll also see if you have any seasonings. Miss Fang, please do as you please. Fang Ningran nodded politely and checked the kitchen ingredients. She found that the kitchen ingredients were really outdated, only soy sauce and bean paste were used the most. Looking at the dishes, sauce beef, sauce pork head, and sauce duck, she frowned slightly and said, excuse me, how do you make this called flour chicken? The chef introduced, spread garlic and ginger slices on the whole chicken, have some soy sauce and salt, and add some brown sugar water. Although Fang Ningran had never touched a man in her past life, at least she was a foodie and didn't even need to wipe it with honey. She asked in response, would it be better to use honey instead of brown sugar to wipe it? The chef quickly found a chicken, wiped it with a little honey, and waited quietly as if he had found the unlock password. She scanned around and didn't find any condiments for making crayfish. She looked at the shopkeeper and said, can you buy some condiments? What do you want? Go buy it now. The shopkeeper said attentively. Sichuan pepper, star anise, cinnamon, fragrant leaves, fennel, dried chili peppers, grass fruit, cardamom, angelica dehurica, cloves, tangerine peel. That's all for now. There will be Dubon in April and May, it seems she can make some Dubon sauce to sell. Hey, there's really money everywhere. After the shopkeeper left, Fang Ningran and Fang Laozi started washing crayfish. When everyone was away, Fang Laozi whispered, Ranran, you didn't know how to cook before. Why can't you know everything now? Didn't you say that your daughter has aspirations and wouldn't be willing to be in the kitchen? Did the original owner say this? She began to recall. It seems like this is happening. On that day, her milk asked her to go back and cook. She only knew how to cook and burn the dishes. Her milk taught her a lesson with a broom, and as she ran away, she said, I was a daughter. My daughter has aspirations in all directions, why would she be willing to go to the kitchen? My heart can either marry a husband, do business, or go to court. At that time, this sentence made the whole village laugh. After all, the imperial examination also depends on your appearance, with a face full of pockmarks and birthmarks, and you are not allowed to take the exam. In the reign of the Empress Dowager, she had already learned that in the month she came, there were only 700 million people in Yenyun, but less than 100 million women, including children and elderly women. In this 7.1 era, the women in the town had to marry at least 3 husbands at the worst, and only those in the village who couldn't afford to raise them had to marry at least one, at the age of 18. The capital is even more prosperous, and one person must marry 6 or more. If you don't marry 6, the government will give you 6. Thinking of this, Fang Ningran shook her head. She had to go to the capital to seek revenge, wouldn't she want to marry 6? Is this kidney busy enough to handle it? Isn't it necessary to have a full feast of pork kidneys, sheep kidneys, chicken kidneys, goose kidneys, duck kidneys, rabbit kidneys, deer kidneys, and wolf kidneys all day long? Ranran. Seeing Fang Ningran stunned, Fang Zi raised his hand and shook it in front of her. Chapter 9. Fang Zi. You are listening at novel full.audio. Ah. Fang Ningran regained consciousness, and Fang Zi sighed. His daughter had already suffered so much, so I'm afraid I made her remember the heartbreaking things. Anyway, the old story shouldn't be brought up again, not anymore. Yesterday while catching fish, she saw the injuries on her daughter's body, which were all whip marks and traces of a soldering iron. The more he thought, the more tears rolled in his eyes, and he lowered his head and stopped talking. Half an hour later, it was already noon. The two of them had back pain and soreness after washing, and even asked the waiter for help, so they finally finished washing. A man in yellow on the third floor is already tasting 3 types of fish. Crucian carp made tofu and crucian carp soup, grass carp made sweet and sour fillet, and catfish made braised fish in brown sauce. Is this the fish you bought? Yes. It looks ordinary, nothing special. He slowly raised his hand and tried braised fish first. The fish was fat but not greasy, smooth and tender in the mouth, and his heart churned with excitement. It's not bad, I'm afraid even the palace doesn't have such a fish. He swallowed it and tried again. Still like this, he continued to try sweet and sour fillet. This sweet and sour fillet is sour and sweet, with a sour taste. Who made this fish? This fish was made by our chef, just using lemon instead of vinegar, honey instead of brown sugar. Miss Fang said that if pineapple was used instead of vinegar, it would be even more delicious. The shopkeeper said earnestly. What is pineapple? The man in yellow asked while eating. Master, it seems that I have heard of this. It is a fruit that was offered as a tribute by the western regions. Last time, your majesty rewarded 2 princes. Is that right? The man continued to eat the fish, and after a while, the fish was swept away. He looked up at his subordinate's surprised expression and coughed slightly. Cough. The shopkeeper then said, I'm going to urge Miss Fang to prepare that bug. It's okay. I'm already a bit full, it's okay to wait. The shopkeeper came to the kitchen. Fang Ningran has already fried the crayfish, mixed lard and vegetable oil into a mixture of oil, half a bowl of garlic puree, mixed with various spices, and added some sauce to stir fry until fragrant. Add salt and stir a few times. Put the crayfish in a pot, add some water, and let it simmer for half a quarter of an hour. Time's up, put the onions and scallions in the pot, then half a bowl of garlic, and stir a few small green peppers. It's done, come out of the pot. The crayfish were packed into 3 plates, leaving one for the people in the kitchen to taste. When the shopkeeper wanted to take it away, Fang Ningran stopped her. Wait. I'm taking the liberty of going up and I'm afraid I'll disturb the nobleman, so I'll teach you how to eat now. Okay. The shopkeeper put down the plate and saw that Fang Ningran peeled off the shell of her head, ate the yellow shrimp yellow, and then began to peel off the shrimp tail. The shrimp tail was extremely plump, with red oil. As Fang Ningran ate the shrimp tail into her mouth, the shopkeeper's throat kept surging. She couldn't wait for Fang Ningran to say something, so she quickly picked up a small lobster and began to learn from it. The tail of the lobster shuttled into her mouth, and the full juice accompanied by the plump tail of the lobster lingers in her stomach. When she wanted to have the second one, she remembered that the master upstairs was still waiting. She quickly wiped her hands on the chef's apron and left with the crayfish in hand. The chefs also began to eat at the sight, praising it endlessly. The shopkeeper came to the 3rd floor and placed the plates on the table. Master, it's already done. Let me demonstrate it to you. Next, the shopkeeper skillfully removes the shrimp shells, fully presents the meat, and puts it in the master bowl. Master, you can dip the meat in some soup, it's even more delicious. The man in yellow hesitated as he looked at two pliers resembling crabs. He frowned slightly. Is this thing really edible? But it smells quite fragrant. Then give it a try. He slowly picked up the meat and dipped it into the soup, putting it in his mouth. The spicy and delicious taste left him stunned, even more delicious than fish. He ordered, "Peel a few more for me." The shopkeeper appeared cautious in front of the master. The man in yellow couldn't bear to watch anymore, so he decided to do it himself, learn from the shopkeeper's appearance to remove the shell, and first suck the shrimp yellow. His eyes lit up, realizing that eating it himself was more delicious than others peeling it. This thing is sure to sell well. Not bad. In about 15 minutes, the 2 plates of crayfish were completely depleted. He held up his 2 hands filled with soup and asked, "Do you have any more?" The shopkeeper shook his head and said, "Master, it's gone." "Well, these things can be sold, but they have to be sent to Huangzhou to sell. The people in this small town may not be able to come out and consume. They have enough materials. This shrimp sells for 35 liang silver, 22 liang fish soup, 26 liang sweet and sour fillet, and 30 liang braised in soy sauce. There are not many fish. Only by raising the price can we make a profit. Just give her 500 yuan a kilogram. This prescription depends on how much silver she wants to sell. The maximum is not more than 500 liang. Of course, the lower the better." The man in yellow ordered. As the shopkeeper walked out, the man in yellow followed along with his subordinates. He wanted to see who he was. The shopkeeper arrived at the kitchen and was welcomed by Fang Ningran. "Shopkeeper, what did your master say? Will you keep this shrimp in the future?" The shopkeeper smiled and said, "Miss Fang, you are really lucky to meet our master. As long as you have it, we will accept it. The master said he will give you 500 yuan per kilogram of shrimp, and your shrimp is 53 kilograms. I gave you some before, but now even if it's 50 kilograms, I will give you another 25 taels of silver. Do you think so?" Fang Laosi looked at his daughter in surprise, as if she had grown up overnight. Fang Ningran smiled and said, "Thank you very much, shopkeeper. What about this prescription?" "This prescription," our master also said, 80 liang, do you think so?" Fang Ningran looked at the shopkeeper's expression of a treacherous businessman and said, "Okay, what a fart. My mother's prescription is worth over 100 pounds of shrimp money. I don't know which unscrupulous businessman is so cunning, yet she is so low in pressure. She still hopes that Fang Zi can earn money to do big things." The man in yellow outside the kitchen immediately sneezed, and upon hearing the sound, Fang Ningran saw a pair of golden silk boots under the curtain, with the corners of her mouth slightly raised. She didn't answer, but instead smiled and asked the chef, "Isn't that called flour chicken better with honey?" The chef nodded repeatedly. 100 taels, no more. I'll add 20 taels on my own. The shopkeeper seems to be cutting meat. Shopkeeper, does sweet and sour fillet taste better if you replace brown sugar with honey? Is replacing vinegar with fruit acid more refreshing? Is it better to marinate the fish to add more flavor? 3 consecutive questions left the shopkeeper stunned. 150 taels. Shopkeeper. Okay, 200 taels, I'll take you. Shopkeeper. There can't be more. The shopkeeper wants to cry without tears. So how much do you say? Fang Ningran smiled slightly and said, "It's easy to say, I'll give you 3 prescriptions, 1200 taels." The shopkeeper was stunned and said, "Those changes are also considered formulas." Fang Ningran shook her finger and said, No, I'll give you 3 other recipes, 1200 taels. If you think it's okay, I'll give you another cold salad recipe. If it's not possible, then I'll go. The shopkeeper looked forward and said, "Is it really a gift? What if it doesn't taste good? Fang Ningran just made improvements for him just now for the highlight. Besides, judging from his value, he knows that this master is probably not an ordinary person. Maybe he's driving all over the country. Then this master will make a fortune." Chapter 10. Draw a portrait to find a handsome guy. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The shopkeeper hesitated for a moment and dared not make a decision. Fang Ningran glanced at the people outside and thought she didn't plan to take it anymore. She was preparing to lower the price, but to her surprise, the swordsman just walked in. He murmured a few words in the shopkeeper's ear, and the shopkeeper looked shocked before saying, "Miss Fang, my master thinks your craftsmanship is good and there should be no problem. I am willing to buy you 4 prescriptions for 1,500 taels." Fang Ningran widened her eyes. She didn't hear it wrong, did she? Is this master a fool? Aren't unscrupulous merchants always lowering prices? She wants to retract what she said earlier. This master is a great person. After receiving the money, Fang Ningran began to work, and Fang Laosi worked hard to get started. He didn't expect his daughter to suddenly become so successful. Is he worried about not having a husband? He was overjoyed in his heart. Fang Ningran made spicy braised beef and purple swallow crispy fish, which are exquisite in terms of knife craftsmanship, heat, and seasoning. Then he cooked a crispy roast goose. The restaurant made soft roast duck, which tasted just like stewed duck. The chef also ate the crispy goose for the first time. After eating a little, he sent it to the 3rd floor. The last cold dish, chopped chili fish head. The shopkeeper has 2 flavors for this fish head, one spicy and the other non-spicy. The spicy one is called chopped chili fish head, and it has already been made. Do you still need one that is not spicy? The shopkeeper smiled wryly. Ancestor, is this digging a pit for her? Some of them eat spicy food and some don't eat spicy food, this must be complete. Add 200 taels, have you bought it? Fang Ningran said with a playful smile, "All right, we're ready." She cut off the fish head, prepared garlic, and made 2 garlic fish head pots, one for upstairs delivery and the other for the chef to eat himself. As it was almost midnight, Fang Ningran ate some while cooking, otherwise she would have been starving. Seeing that there was chicken soup in the pot, she quickly filled a bowl for Fang Laosi. "Shopkeeper, what does that person in your family say?" The shopkeeper can only chuckle, she can't say that the one in his family still wants to eat after vomiting. "I ran out now, I don't know what I went for." The master is quite satisfied. "That's good, this delay will be in the afternoon. I have to hurry and leave. I haven't bought any pots, pans, ladles, and pots yet." The shopkeeper was curious and said, "Are you moving into a new house?" Fang Ningran shook her head and said, "I split up today and didn't have anything. I have to buy it again. There's a chicken called flour chicken and a roasted duck over here. Take them back to eat." Fang Ningran smiled and asked, "Do the shopkeeper have any pastries?" "Give them away. Hee, as long as you're not afraid of being beaten, you can have as thick a face as you want." "Yes, Xiaochun will pack a plate of various dishes for Miss Fang, just in case she has any clues. I hope the girl can give a review and evaluation later." Fang Ningran awkwardly smiled and said, "Okay, they are very willing to give it to you, but they are afraid of not speaking up. As soon as you speak up, it will be a prescription." Sure enough, the businessman really doesn't want to suffer at all. "Miss, I'm afraid you can't take these, why don't I call a carriage to follow you?" The shopkeeper actually wondered why the master asked him to send a carriage to follow her and send her back. But as the master said, "I will definitely follow suit." Fang Ningran was slightly taken aback. Is this shopkeeper so kind? But later on, she can take a carriage to put things on the cart. Stepping out of the restaurant, the carriage was already waiting. Fang Ningran said, "Dad, take the cart to buy pots, bowls, ladles, and pots, and then buy a few large jars for making pickled vegetables. I need to go buy some other things. Let's buy them separately so that it's faster. Fang Laosi ate a bowl of chicken and tasted some vegetables, and was already full. His daughter said she would go make it herself. Watching her father leave, Fang Ningran headed in another direction. Arriving at the calligraphy and painting street, Fang Ningran walked into an art museum. Boss, are you drawing people? Girl, are you going to paint yourself or someone else? What is the difference between drawing oneself and others? There is naturally a difference. Drawing your own big paper for 4 taels of silver, while drawing others relies on guessing. It naturally costs 6 taels, averaging 3 taels for yourself, 5 taels for others, and 2 taels for the small one. Others 4 taels. This is ordinary paper, and there is even better rice paper, which is more expensive. Is painting a person so expensive? Of course. Fang Ningran shook her head, walked out of the store, and onto the street. She saw stalls and painters, all of whom looked like medium-sized paper. Boss, how much does it cost per painting? The woman looked up at her and said gently, Miss, if you paint yourself 501, you need 1 or 2 to paint others. Fang Ningran took out 20 taels and said, in half an hour, 20 pieces, as long as they look like it. The woman nodded, and Fang Ningran admired her. Shouldn't she be very happy to hear 20 taels? The woman raised her pen and asked, what are his characteristics? Clear eyebrows, beautiful phoenix eyes, and a small tear mole on the lower eyelid of the left eye. The nose bridge is extremely high, and the mountain roots are superior. The woman followed Fang Ningran's description and quickly drew a portrait, like a modern simple brush painting. She couldn't help but sigh that having a phone would be so troublesome. Even a camera is fine, but she is destined to miss those things. But this painting is also quite similar to that. Take 20 of these pictures. The woman quickly picked up her pen, and within half an hour, she had already finished drawing. She rubbed her wrist and handed it over. Girls are all fine now. Thank you very much. Fang Ningran held the portrait and pasted it all the way. Just as she finished pasting, there were only 2 left. When she was preparing to keep them, she happened to see a man wearing a dirty and disheveled face tearing off her portrait. Hey, what are you doing? Why are you tearing up my portrait? The man frowned slightly as he held the portrait. How did this woman draw him? Do they know each other? Okay, this person is not interesting enough. He treats him like a brother, but he actually met her in advance without telling him. I'm afraid he has already eaten the delicious food. Fang Ningran saw him stunned and snatched the portrait from his hand, saying, What should I ask you? What are you staring at? The man hesitated and said, I seem to have seen. Really? Where is he? Fang Ningran's eyes sparkled. I can't remember it for a while now. But I remember where I came with him. Fang Ningran saw that he didn't seem to be lying and asked, if you're on the same road as him, then you must know who he is. The man pretended to have a headache and said, it hurts so much. We met a bandit, and I got separated from him. Then I can't remember, and I don't know where my home is. I only remember my surname is Xiao. Fang Ningran carefully looked into his eyes and saw that he didn't dodge at all. She first believed his lies. Are you sure you're familiar with him? Is it possible that you're the same mother? Fang Ningran asked tentatively. The man rolled his eyes and said, I don't want to be the same mother as him. I don't know how miserable it is. My father died early, and I have to practice martial arts every day. Like a woman, he runs around every day. Although he doesn't adjust, he also has no worries about food and clothing. I don't remember. Do you have any money on you? The man shook his head. Where do you live then? The man pointed to the corner. Fang Ningran is not sure if this guy has anything to do with that guy, so she can only think of taking him in first. After all, she is responsible for that beautiful man. If this guy is his younger brother, then her guilt will be greater.